It takes approximately 1 second for a life to collapse. 1 second for the floor to vanish, for the future you imagined to fragment into 1,000 impossible pieces. I know this now because I watched it happen. I watched it happen across a crowded room, across 200 people in expensive suits and clinking champagne glasses, across the dizzying distance between the stage and the back wall where I stood holding a glass. I no longer had the strength to lift. His eyes found mine. Elias, my mentor, my secret, my ruin. And beside him, illuminated by the soft gold of the spotlight, his wife's face shifted. Not dramatically, not with the theatrical rage you see in movies. Something far worse. Something quiet and knowing and final. She saw, in that single, devastating second, Victoria saw everything. Every late night at the office. Every excuse about blueprints and deadlines. Every lie wrapped in professional necessity. Every touch that never happened in front of witnesses. She saw it all written in the space between his gaze and mine. A distance of 30 feet that felt like the Grand Canyon, and a whisper all at once. The room kept spinning. People kept clapping. But for me, for us, time had stopped dead. I need to tell you how we got there. Not to the moment of collapse, but to the fault lines that made it inevitable. Because secrets like ours don't begin with betrayal. They begin with something far more dangerous. They begin with recognition. My name is Elara Vance. 4 years ago, I was 26 years old and invisible in plain sight. I worked at Morrison & Cole, one of the most respected architectural firms in the city. 53rd floor. Glass walls. Views that made tourists press their faces against observation decks. I was a junior designer, which meant I was brilliant at making coffee, brilliant at staying late, and brilliant at watching my ideas appear in other people's presentations without my name anywhere attached. You learn to live with it. The architecture world is brutal that way. You spend years learning to see beauty in load-bearing walls and natural light trajectories. And then you spend more years learning to swallow the disappointment of watching men with better connections take credit for your best work. I had become expert at both. I had become expert at disappearing. Elias Vance did not disappear. He was 51 when I met him. Partner at the firm. Winner of the Pritzker Prize a decade earlier, which in architecture is like winning an Oscar and a Nobel Prize simultaneously. His buildings were everywhere: the waterfront library with the curved glass facade, the children's hospital with the gardens on every floor, the private residence that had been photographed for 100 magazines. He was legend. He was myth. He was also, to my complete surprise, human. Our first real conversation happened at 3 in the morning. I was working on a community center proposal that I knew would never be built. It was for a neglected neighborhood on the south side, the kind of project the firm only took for tax purposes, the kind assigned to junior staff because the real clients never visited those neighborhoods anyway. But I cared. God, I cared so much it kept me awake. I wanted those kids to have light. I wanted those families to have space. I wanted them to feel, walking through those doors, that someone had thought about them. I didn't hear him approach. One moment I was alone in the open plan studio, surrounded by the soft hum of computers and the distant lights of the city. The next, his voice came from behind me. Those sightlines are wrong. I jumped, spun. There he was, Elias Vance in the flesh, wearing the same clothes he'd worn to some black tie event hours earlier. His tie loosened, his collar undone, looking less like a legend and more like a man who couldn't sleep either. "Excuse me?" I managed. He walked closer, not asking permission, not introducing himself as if he needed to. He pointed at my model, at the orientation of the windows relative to the street. "You've designed for the sunrise. Beautiful, poetic. But these kids won't see sunrise. They'll be here after school, late afternoon. You're giving them the wrong light." I should have been defensive. I should have been intimidated. Instead, I heard myself say. The brief said community gatherings, mornings, seniors using the space. He looked at me then, really looked, not at my face, not in that way, but at the work, at the care I'd taken, at the hours I had spent on a project that would never matter to anyone important. Briefs are written by people who don't build anything, he said, who uses a community center at 3 in the afternoon. I knew the answer. I'd researched it. Teens, after-school programs, working parents picking up kids, so give them light. He pulled up a chair, sat down beside me, and for the next 2 hours, we talked. Not about the project, not exactly. We talked about the way light fell in the apartment building where he grew up in Chicago, about the fire escape he'd sat on as a kid, doing homework until the light failed, about how he'd decided at 12 years old that he would spend his life shaping the way light entered rooms, about how, somewhere along the way, he'd stopped shaping and started managing. I told him about my father, a carpenter who built custom furniture that no one could afford, who taught me to see the grain in wood and the joint in corners, who died when I was 19 and left me with the certainty that beauty mattered even when no one was looking. When we finally stopped talking, the sky was turning gray beyond the windows. The cleaning crew had come and gone without disturbing us. The city was waking up. I have a proposal due Friday, he said, standing, stretching. The library project. My team's concepts are safe, boring. Come to my office tomorrow. Show me what you'd do. He left before I could respond. Before I could tell him I was just a junior designer, that I wasn't assigned to his team, that I had no business walking into his corner office with its 53rd floor views and its legacy and its legend. Before I could talk myself out of it, I went anyway. That was the beginning. Not of the affair. Not yet. That was the beginning of the thing that made the affair inevitable, because he saw me, for the first time in my professional life, someone with power, with authority, with the ability to change my trajectory. Looked at me and saw not a coffee maker, not a credit taker, not an invisible woman. He saw a mind. He saw a collaborator. He saw an equal. Dangerous. So dangerous. I just didn't know it yet. The library project became ours. Not his, not mine. Ours. We worked side by side in his office for weeks, sometimes until dawn. He pushed me harder than anyone ever had, tore apart my sketches, made me cry once, privately, in the bathroom, then made me come back and defend my ideas until he admitted I was right. He taught me that architecture wasn't about buildings. It was about people, about the way a corridor could make a lost child feel safe, about the way a reading room could smell like possibility. I fell in love with his mind first, then his hands, the way they moved when he explained something, then his voice, the roughness of it at the end of long nights. Then, finally, with him, the first kiss happened in the model room, a small space off the main studio where physical models of buildings lived on shelves, miniature cities gathering dust. We'd gone in to check the scale of something, and suddenly we were standing too close in the dim light, surrounded by tiny buildings, tiny lives, tiny versions of the world we spent our days designing. He kissed me like a man drowning, like I was air, like he'd been holding his breath for years and had finally found permission to breathe. We didn't talk about his wife. Not then. Not for a long time. Victoria existed in the spaces between our conversations. A ghost we both pretended not to see. I knew the story. Society, marriage. Two families with money and history and expectations. A son in college back east. A daughter finishing high school. A life that looked perfect from the outside and felt from the inside. Like a prison of polite conversation and separate bedrooms. I told myself that made it okay. That I wasn't breaking anything that wasn't already broken. That love, this real, this consuming, this essential, couldn't be wrong. Lies. All of it. But lies We needed to believe. The secrecy became its own language. Coded messages slipped into project emails. Meetings scheduled at hours no one would question. The thrill of passing in the hallway, professionally distant, while electricity hummed between us. We became experts at invisibility, at reading each other's faces across crowded conference rooms, at finding moments in stairwells, in supply closets, in the back of his car parked in the underground garage where the security cameras couldn't quite reach. I told myself I was living, that this was passion, real passion, the kind that poets wrote about and architects forgot in their safe, sensible lives. I told myself the risk was worth it, that loving him, even secretly, even dangerously, was better than never loving at all. I was so young, so stupid, so completely, utterly alive. The night before the gala, we met one last time. We thought it would be our last time. We'd made a decision, or tried to. The pressure was building. A junior associate, Marcus, had started watching us. Nothing obvious, just lingering looks, questions about why I was on certain projects, why Elias suddenly cared about community center sightlines. We felt the walls closing in. We met in the parking garage. It was raining, hard, the kind of rain that makes the city blur and soften, that turns streetlights into watercolors. I was crying. He was holding my face in his hands. "We can't do this anymore," he said. "Kana, it's not fair to you. This life, this hiding. You deserve. Don't tell me what I deserve." He kissed my forehead, my eyelids, my lips, soft, slow, like he was memorizing me. "Tomorrow, after the award," he said, "I'll tell her. Not everything, but enough that I'm not happy, that things need to change." I wanted to believe him. I did believe him. In that moment, with the rain soaking through my coat and his heart beat under my palm, I believed everything. "Just get through tomorrow," I whispered. "Then we'll figure it out." He smiled. That smile, the one that had undone me 100 times. Just get through tomorrow. We didn't know. How could we? How could either of us know that tomorrow was already waiting, that the stage was already set, that Victoria's eyes were already sharp enough to cut through a room full of lies? I went home. I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed, watching the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past months, trying to find the exact second when my life had stopped being my own. I couldn't find it. There was no single moment. There was only him. Only us. Only the terrifying, exhilarating, impossible fact of what we've become. The next morning, I put on my best dress, dark blue, professional, but soft. I did my hair carefully, my makeup. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman on the edge of something. I just didn't know what. The gala started at 7. By 8, the speeches had begun. By 9, Elias was on stage, accepting his award, his lifetime achievement, his moment of public glory. By Nino 1, Victoria knew everything. By Nino 2, so did I, and the world, as I'd known it, was already gone. The weeks after the library project submission were the happiest of my life. Also, the most terrified. There's a particular flavor to happiness built on borrowed time, a sharpness at the edges that ordinary contentment never has. Every smile felt like a secret. Every touch felt like a confession. Every morning I woke and thought, today it ends. And every night I fell asleep in my empty apartment with his voice still warm in my memory. We developed rituals, small ones, invisible to anyone not looking for them. At exactly 7:15 each morning, he would walk past my desk with his coffee. Never stopped, never spoke, but his hand would brush the back of my chair, just slightly, just enough for me to feel the vibration. My signa, he was there. The day could begin at 12:45. When everyone else was at lunch, I'd take the stairs to the 48th floor. There was a supply closet there, small and forgotten, filled with rolls of blueprints that no one ever looked at. He'd meet me. 5 minutes, sometimes 10. Never enough. Always too much. The smell of paper and dust in his skin. The way his hands mapped my face in the dark. The whispered conversations about nothing and everything. "We can't keep doing this," I said once, my forehead against his chest. His heartbeat loud in my ear. "I know. Someone will notice." "Probably." "Then why?" He tilted my face up. Kissed me quiet. "Because I tried not to. For 20 years, I tried not to feel anything. And then you sat in the community center at 3 in the morning, caring about something that would never matter to anyone, and I could not feel you. I can't go back to not feeling you." That was the thing about Elias. He made poetry sound like structure, made love sound like architecture, made the impossible feel like simple physics. The library project won. Not just internal approval. The city loved it. The paper ran a feature. Elias gave interviews, always mentioning my team, never naming names, but I knew. I knew which parts of those soaring glass walls came from my hand. I knew which light angles were mine. I stood in front of that newspaper with coffee shaking in my hand and thought, I exist. I matter. Someone sees me. Dangerous. So dangerous. Marcus saw me too. Just not the way I wanted. He was 34, ambitious, as good at his job in the way that people are when they've never had to fight for it. Old money, old connections, old assumptions about who belonged and who didn't. He'd been at the firm 7 years, partner track, golden boy, and he'd never once looked at my work, never once acknowledged my existence beyond the necessary politeness of shared spaces. That changed after the library project. I caught him staring at my desk one afternoon. Not at me, at the photographs I'd pinned up, reference images for the next project, a small art center I was developing on my own time. He stood there, arms crossed, head tilted, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "That's interesting," he said. Not a question. An assessment. Sketching, I said. Too quick. Too defensive. Elias seemed impressed with your sketches. The way he said it. The pause before my name. The weight he put on impressed. My stomach dropped. He's been generous with his time, I managed. The whole team learned a lot. Marcus smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sure you did." He walked away. I watched him go, telling myself I was paranoid, that nothing had happened, that there was nothing to see. But that night, when Elias and I met in the blueprint closet, I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls had shifted, that the space felt smaller, that someone else had been breathing our air. "We need to be careful," I whispered. "We're always careful. More careful." Marcus, Elias, stiffened. What about Marcus? He was looking at my desk, asking questions about the project, about you, about me, about how impressed you seem. Silence. In the dim light, his face was unreadable. Then he pulled me closer, wrapped his arms around me like he could shield me from everything. "I'll handle Marcus," he said. "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll handle him." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that Elias Vance, with his legend and his power and his 53rd floor office, could protect us from the consequences of our own choices. But even then, even in his arms, I knew the truth. No one could protect us. Not from Marcus. Not from Victoria. Not from ourselves. The art center became our new project. Officially, it was mine. Unofficially, it was ours. He'd come to my desk after hours, pull up a chair, work beside me like a colleague instead of a partner. We'd argue about sightlines and material choices and the placement of a single window for hours. We'd resolve the argument by finding something better than either of us had imagined alone. "Collaboration," he said once. Late, exhausted, happy. That's the thing I forgot. That's the thing buildings need. Not one vision, two, fighting, merging, Becoming something neither could be alone. Is that what we're doing? I asked. Becoming something. He looked at me. Really looked. The way he had that first night, but different now. Softer, deeper. I don't know what we're becoming, he said. I just know I don't want to stop. Neither did I. God help me. Neither did I. That spring came. The city softened. Windows opened. The smell of rain on hot pavement filled the streets. We found new places to meet. A rooftop garden 3 blocks from the office. A cafe in a neighborhood where no one knew us. His car parked under bridges, hidden in the shadows of the structures he'd spent his life designing. I learned things about him. Small things. He couldn't eat eggs. The texture made him gag. He hummed while he worked. Old jazz standards, songs his mother had played when he was a child. He was terrified of flying, but did it constantly because the job demanded it. He'd never had a dog. Always wanted one. Victoria was allergic. She's allergic to a lot of things, he said once. Bitter. Then caught himself. That was unfair. She can't help being who she is, can she? He looked at me. You're asking me to blame her? To make this easier, I'm asking you to be honest. About what? About the fact that I married the wrong person 25 years ago. About the fact that I knew it then and did it anyway. About the fact that every day since has been a slow, quiet dying until you. He stopped, swallowed, looked away, until me, what? Until you reminded me I was alive. I kissed him then, hard, desperate, trying to pour everything I felt into that single point of contact, trying to make him feel, in return, that he wasn't alone in this, that I carried it too. The guilt, the fear, the impossible hope. We didn't talk about the future. Couldn't. Every conversation about what happens next ended in the same place. His children, his marriage, his reputation, my career, the wreckage we'd leave behind if we ever stopped hiding. So we didn't stop hiding. We just kept going, deeper, further, more. The night before the gala, we met one last time. We thought it would be our last time. We'd made a decision, or tried to. The pressure was building. Marcus had stopped asking questions. That was worse. He'd started watching. Quiet, patient, waiting. We met in the parking garage. It was raining, hard. The kind of rain that makes the city blur and soften, that turns streetlights into watercolors. I was crying. He was holding my face in his hands. We can't do this anymore, he said. I know, it's not fair to you. This life, this hiding. You deserve. Don't tell me what I deserve. He kissed my forehead, my eyelids, my lips, soft, slow, like he was memorizing me. Tomorrow, after the award, he said, I'll tell her. Not everything, but enough that I'm not happy, that things need to change. I wanted to believe him. I did believe him. In that moment, with the rain soaking through my coat and his heart beat under my palm, I believed everything. Just get through tomorrow, I whispered. Then we'll figure it out. He smiled. That smile, the one that had undone me 100 times. Just get through tomorrow. I went home. I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed, watching the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past months, trying to find the exact second when my life had stopped being my own. I couldn't find it. There was no single moment. There was only him, only us, only the terrifying, exhilarating, impossible fact of what we'd become. The next morning, I put on my best dress, dark blue, professional, but soft. I did my hair carefully, my makeup. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman on the edge of something. I just didn't know what. The gala started at 7. By 8, the speeches had begun. By 9, Elias was on stage, accepting his award, his lifetime achievement, his moment of public glory. By Nina 1, Victoria knew everything. By Nino 2. So did I. The week after the gala passed like a fever dream. I went to work. I sat at my desk. I stared at blueprints that no longer made sense. The lines blurred. The angles shifted. Nothing held still. Elias didn't call, didn't email, didn't appear at my desk at 7:15. His office door stayed closed. Meetings happened behind it, voices low, nothing legible through the frosted glass. I told myself he was handling it. Told myself Victoria needed time. Told myself the silence was temporary, strategic, necessary. I didn't believe any of it. On Thursday, Marcus stopped at my desk. He didn't speak, just placed a file folder in front of me and walked away. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A transfer notice. Effective immediately. I was reassigned to the Southside Community Center project. Full-time. The project no one wanted. The project that would never be built. No explanation. No discussion. Just ink on paper and Marcus's retreating back. I made it to the bathroom before I threw up. The community center was 3 miles from the office, but felt like another planet. A converted storefront in a neighborhood the city had forgotten. Fluorescent lights, broken chairs, a single computer that took 15 minutes to boot up. My new team consisted of one intern who cried when stressed and one project manager who spent most of his day on phone calls. That had nothing to do with work. I threw myself into it anyway. What else could I do? I measured windows. I sketched possibilities. I interviewed residents who looked at me with suspicion, then slowly warmed when they realized I was actually listening. A grandmother who wanted a place for her grandchildren to do homework. A teenager who dreamed of art classes. A disabled veteran who couldn't access the current building at all. Their faces became my new obsession. Their needs became my new language. I poured everything into that forgotten storefront. All the love I couldn't give. All the hope I couldn't keep. All the future I'd imagined that now existed only in the geometry of load-bearing walls, accessible entrances. Elias found me there on a Tuesday night. 3 weeks since the gala. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of telling myself I was fine. I was moving on. I was stronger than this. I looked up from my sketches, and there he was, standing in the doorway of that fluorescent lit hell, still in his suit from some meeting, looking older than I remembered, tired in a way that went beyond sleep. Ilara's voice, just my name, and I was undone. "Don't," I said. "Don't come here. Don't do this. I had to see you. You had 3 weeks. 3 weeks of nothing. 3 weeks of watching them bury me in this." I gestured at the room, the broken chairs, the dying computer, this exile. "And now you show up and say you had to see me." He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed, music thumping. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know sorry isn't enough. I know nothing is enough. But I'm sorry. For what? For which part? For loving me. For leaving me. For letting them do this to me while you sat in your 53rd floor office playing legend. I didn't let them do anything. I couldn't stop them. Couldn't or wouldn't." He flinched. Good. I wanted him to flinch. I wanted him to feel even a fraction of what I'd felt every morning waking up to silence. "Victoria knows," he said quietly. "Not everything, but enough. She saw us at the gala, the way I looked at you. She didn't need more, and she gave me a choice. Her or you, the marriage or the scandal, the life we've built or the one I wanted." I waited, heart pounding, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear it, needing to feel the weight of it land. I chose the marriage. It's 3 words, simple, final. The architecture of my destruction delivered without ornament. "I chose the marriage," he repeated, "because choosing you would destroy you. Not just me. You. They'd take your career, your reputation, everything you've worked for. They'd make sure you never worked in this city again. Probably this state. probably anywhere that matters. So this is for me. This silence. This exile. This is you protecting me. It's the only way I can. I laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. You're not protecting me, Elias. You're protecting yourself. Your legacy. Your precious reputation. Your lifetime achievement award that you accepted while I stood in the back like a ghost. That's not fair. Fair. I stood, walked toward him, close enough to feel his breath, to see the cracks in his composure. To want things I'd spent 3 weeks training myself not to want. You want to talk about fair? Fair is me, invisible for years, finally seen by someone who mattered. Fair is me, falling in love with a man who made me believe I was worth seeing. Fair is not. My voice broke. Damn it. I didn't want it to break. Fair is not you standing in this abandoned storefront, telling me you're leaving to protect me. He reached for me. I let him. God help me. I'll let him. His hands on my face. His forehead against mine. His breath warm and familiar and devastating. I love you, he whispered. I have never loved anyone the way I love you. Not my wife. Not my children. Not my work. You, only you. Then stay. I can't. You can. You're choosing not to. I'm choosing the least destructive option. The one that leaves you with a future. I don't want a future without you. You don't mean that? Don't tell me what I mean. I pulled back, looked at him, committed every line of his face to memory. I mean it. I would rather have nothing with you than everything without you. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. That's why I have to go, he said. Because you mean it. Because you'd burn yourself down for me, and I can't let you. I won't. He kissed me then, one last time, soft and desperate and full of everything we couldn't say. Then he was gone. The door closed behind him. The fluorescent lights hummed, the computer whirred, and I stood alone in the middle of that forgotten room, surrounded by sketches of a building that would never exist. Holding the wreckage of everything I had believed was possible, I didn't cry. Not then. The tears came later, alone in my apartment, face pressed into a pillow that still smelled like him. They came in waves, in gasps, in sounds I didn't recognize as my own. They came until I had nothing left, until I was empty and dry and staring at the ceiling, wondering how the world kept spinning when mine had stopped. The next morning, I went back to the community center. I measured windows. I interviewed residents. I sketched possibilities. I did my job. I existed. I breathed. I told myself that was enough. It wasn't. Cut. I did it anyway. Weeks passed. Then months. Summer came and went. The community center project moved forward, inch by painful inch. The grandmother got her homework space. The teenager got her art classes. The veteran got his accessible entrance. Small victories. Real victories. Victories I could hold on to when the nights got hard and the silence got loud. I stopped checking Elias's name in the news. Stopped looking for his face in architecture publications. Stopped walking past the buildings he'd designed. I built walls. Careful, deliberate walls. Walls that protected me from the past. Walls that kept the future out. Marcus got promoted. Partner track accelerated. I heard the news and felt nothing. Or told myself I felt nothing. The distinction mattered less than the survival. Then, in October, the call came. The community center had secured funding. Real funding. Enough to build. Enough to matter. The city wanted a formal presentation to the planning committee, to the press, to anyone who would listen, and they wanted me to present it. I stood in my apartment, phone in hand, staring at the wall. Me, presenting, public, visible, the thing I'd been hiding from for months, the thing that terrified me most. I'll do it, I heard myself say. The date was set, November 15th, City Hall, 3 o'clock. I didn't know then that Elias would be there. Didn't know that Victoria would be there. Didn't know that the walls I'd built so carefully were about to crumble in front of everyone who mattered. I just knew I had to stand up, had to speak, had to prove that the woman who'd been exiled to a forgotten storefront still existed, still mattered, still had something to say. The geometry of desire, I learned, was simple. You wanted, you reached, you broke. The geometry of survival was harder. You built, you waited, you hoped. November 15th, I would find out if hope was enough. November 15th arrived cold and clear. The kind of day where the light hits buildings at angles that make architects weep. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror at 6 a.m., wearing nothing but a towel, staring at a woman I barely recognized. She looked stronger than I felt, sharper, ready. I had prepared for weeks, memorized every slide, anticipated every question, practiced my answers until they sounded less like rehearsal and more like truth. The community center deserved that much. The grandmother, the teenager, the veteran, they deserved someone who could fight for them. I didn't let myself think about who might be in the audience. Didn't let myself imagine familiar faces in unfamiliar rows. This wasn't about them. This was about the building, the people, the future, the lies we tell ourselves to survive. City Hall was brutalist, architecture at its most unforgiving, concrete, sharp angles, small windows that made the lobby feel like a bunker. I walked through security with my laptop case pressed against my chest, heart hammering, feet steady. The hearing room was already half full at 2:45. Planning committee members at the long table up front. City officials in the first rows. Press in the back, cameras ready. I found my seat near the front, placed my laptop carefully, arranged my notes. Didn't look around. Didn't scan faces. Didn't need to. I felt him before I saw him. The way the air changes when someone essential enters a space. The way your skin knows before your eyes confirm. I looked up against every instinct, against every promise I'd made myself. Elias stood in the doorway. Beside him, Victoria. She was smaller than I remembered. Delicate, perfectly dressed in charcoal gray. Her hand rested on his arm, light and proprietary. Possession without effort. His face was unreadable. A building with all the windows dark. I looked away, focused on my laptop. Counted to 10, then 20, then 100. At 2:58, the committee chair called the hearing to order. At 3:02, they announced my name. I stood, walked to the podium, faced the room, and for one terrible, crystalline moment, I couldn't speak. Not because of fear, not because of the committee or the cameras or the weight of expectation, because in that moment, standing in front of everyone who mattered, I realized I had nothing left to lose. No reputation to protect. No future to preserve. No secret to keep. They'd already taken everything. All except this building. All except these people. All except my voice. I found it. 7 months ago, I said, I was assigned to a project no one wanted. A community center in a neighborhood the city forgot. The building was a converted storefront with broken chairs and a dying computer. The budget was laughable. The timeline was impossible. The residents had been promised help so many times they'd stopped believing promises. Clicked to the first slide. Photographs. The grandmother. The teenager. The veteran. Their faces filled the room. This is who we're building for. Not statistics. Not demographics. People. A grandmother raising 3 grandchildren because their mother lost her battle with addiction. A teenager who draws on napkins because there's nowhere else to create. A veteran who served this country and can't enter half the buildings in his own neighborhood. I walked them through the design. The windows angled for afternoon light, not morning. The accessible entrance that didn't look like an afterthought. The flexible space that could be homework room in the afternoon and art studio in the evening. and community meetings on weekends. The materials chosen not for trendiness, but for durability, for dignity, for the message they sent. You matter. You've always mattered. Someone just forgot to tell you. I didn't look at Elias, didn't check his face, didn't want to know if he was proud or pained or indifferent. I focused on the committee, on the few who nodded, on the one who frowned, on the woman in the second row who wiped her eyes when I talked about the grandmother. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then someone clapped. Then someone else. Then enough that the committee chair had to call for order. Questions came. I answered them. Technical, practical, budgetary. I had answers for everything, had prepared for everything, except the last question from the back of the room. A voice I didn't recognize, attached to a face I couldn't see. Miss Vance, can you tell us about your relationship with Elias Vance and how it influenced this project? The room went still. I didn't look at him, didn't look at Victoria, didn't look anywhere except the face of the woman who'd asked a reporter. Young, hungry, holding a recorder like a weapon. I'm sorry, I said. Voice steady, miraculously steady. Could you repeat the question? How did your personal relationship with partner Elias Vance affect the development of this project, given that you were reassigned following the firm's annual gala in the spring? The committee chair cleared his throat. This is hardly relevant to, with respect, the reporter interrupted. The project's lead designer was removed from a prestigious firm and placed on this community center after rumors of an inappropriate relationship with a senior partner. The public has a right to know if this project's funding is connected to any I slept with him. The words came from somewhere outside me, somewhere calm and certain and done with hiding. I slept with Elias Vance for months, in secret, while he was married, while I was his junior employee. It was wrong. It was complicated. It was the most real thing I've ever felt. Behind me, someone gasped. In front of me, the committee chair's mouth opened and closed. Somewhere to my left, a camera flash went off. Then another. Then too many to count. And none of that, I continued, none of it has anything to do with this building, these people, this community. I designed this center because they deserved someone who saw them. I fought for this funding because they'd been invisible long enough. Whatever happened between me and Elias Vance is between me and Elias Vance. It doesn't belong to this room. It doesn't belong to this project. It doesn't belong to you. I gathered my notes, closed my laptop, turned from the podium, and there he was, Elias, standing now, Victoria's hand no longer on his arm, his face no longer unreadable. Something raw there, something exposed behind him, near the door. Marcus, smiling, just slightly. Just enough, the reporter who'd asked the question wasn't young and hungry by accident. She was planted, fed information, given a target, and I just walked directly into her sights. Victoria moved first, not toward me, toward the door. Her heels clicked against the concrete floor, steady, unhurried. The gait of a woman who'd spent her life learning to exit rooms gracefully. She didn't look back. Didn't need to. She'd already won. Elias started toward me, stopped, started again. A man caught between instincts. Ilara, don't. Held up a hand. Just don't. The cameras kept flashing. The room kept buzzing. The committee chair was calling for order, for quiet, for everyone to please sit down. No one listened. I walked, past Elias, past a reporter, past the rows of strangers who now knew the most intimate details of my life, past Marcus, who didn't bother hiding his satisfaction. At the door, I paused, looked back, found Elias in the chaos. He looked exactly the way he had that first night in the model room, like a man drowning, like he'd been holding his breath for years and had finally found permission to breathe. Except, this time, I was the one walking away. The hallway was empty, cold, brutalist concrete stretching in both directions. I leaned against the wall and waited for my heart to stop hammering. Waited for the adrenaline to fade. Waited for the realization of what I'd just done to land. It didn't take long. I'd just confessed to an affair. On record. In public. In front of reporters who would file stories before midnight. I'd just destroyed whatever remained of my professional reputation. I'd just handed Marcus exactly what he wanted. I'd just made Victoria's victory complete. And I'd just told the truth. For the first time in months. For the first time since that parking garage in the rain. I'd stood in front of strangers and said the words out loud. No more hiding. No more secrets. No more geometry of desire measured in stolen moments and coded messages. Just truth. Messy and painful and liberating and terrifying. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then a dozen times. Messages, emails, notifications from news alerts. I didn't look. Couldn't look. The door behind me opened. Footsteps, stopping close enough to feel. I'm sorry, Elias said. I'm so sorry. I didn't know she'd die. Didn't know Marcus I should have protected you. I should have protected me. I turned, looked at him. Really looked. You couldn't protect me from yourself. How were you going to protect me from everyone else? He had no answer. Of course, he had no answer. I loved you, I said. I loved you so much, I forgot who I was without you. But standing in that room just now, telling strangers what we did, I remembered. I remembered that I existed before you, that I'll exist after, that the only person who can destroy me is me, Laura. I'm not finished. You chose your marriage. You chose your reputation. You chose your legacy. I understand why. I even respect it in some broken way. But you don't get to show up now and apologize. You don't get to protect me after the damage is done. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I walked away. Down the brutalist hallway. Past the small windows. Toward the exit in the cold November air and whatever waited on the other side. Behind me. Elias didn't follow. Ahead of me, the future was unwritten, and for the first time in months, that felt less like terror and more like possibility. The stories hit before midnight. By morning, they'd spread everywhere. Architecture blogs, local news, a national outlet looking for a slow news day. The headlines varied, but the message was the same. Rising star confesses affair with legendary architect at public hearing. They used my photograph from the firm's website, the one where I'm smiling, hopeful, unaware of what waited. They used Elias's Pritzker portrait. They used a shot of Victoria leaving City Hall, chin high, eyes forward. The wronged wife played perfectly. I didn't read the comments, didn't watch the segments. Didn't torture myself with strangers' opinions about my character, my choices, my future. I stayed in my apartment with the curtains drawn and my phone on silent and let the world spin without me. 3 days passed, then a week, then 2. The firm called. Not Elias, HR, a woman whose voice I didn't recognize, reading from a script. My position had been eliminated, restructuring, nothing personal. My final paycheck would arrive by mail. Please return any firm property within 10 business days. I hung up and sat very still and waited for the collapse I knew was coming. It didn't arrive. Somewhere in the weeks since the hearing, since standing in that room and telling the truth, I'd stopped being able to fall apart. The breaking had already happened. What remained was something harder. Something that could survive this. The community center called next. The grandmother. She'd found my personal number somehow, called to say the funding was still there. The project was still moving forward. Did I still want to be part of it? Did I still want to be part of it? I cried for the first time in weeks. Not for Elias, not for myself, for her, for the teenager who'd get her art classes, for the veteran who'd finally have access, for all of them who'd seen me at my most exposed and decided I was still worth trusting. Yes, I said. Yes, I still want to be part of it. We met in the converted storefront. Same broken chairs, same dying computer, same fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. But different now. It's ours now. Mine now. We heard what happened, the grandmother said, on the news. All of it. I braced myself, waited for the judgment, the distance, the quiet withdrawal of trust. That took courage, she said instead, standing there, telling truth when lying would have been easier. I didn't feel courageous. I felt desperate. Same thing, baby. Same thing. The teenager handed me a sketch, her best one yet. A building with windows angled just right, afternoon light flooding every room. My building. Our building. Rendered in charcoal on cheap paper by hands that believed in futures. This is for you, she said, for not giving up on us. I pinned it to the wall beside my desk, right where I could see it every day. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. Also, the most real. I worked 15-hour days on the community center, fundraising, permitting, design revisions, construction oversight, problems I'd never faced before, solved with resources I'd never had to stretch, alongside people who'd spent their whole lives learning to do more with less. Kai didn't think about Elias. That's what I told myself, what I needed to believe. The truth was more complicated. I thought about him constantly in the quiet moments before sleep, in the sudden silences between meetings, in the way light fell across certain rooms. But the thoughts changed over time. Less ache, more memory, less longing, more gratitude for what he'd given me, even as I mourned what he'd taken. The ability to see, the confidence to speak, the knowledge that I could love completely and survive the loss. I heard about him through others. The firm had restructured. Marcus made partner. Victoria and Elias appeared at events together, united in public, frozen in private. His designs grew safer, more conventional. The fire that had defined his early work banked to embers. He'd chosen survival over passion. I understood that now, could even forgive it some days. But understanding and accepting were different things. I accepted nothing except the life I was, building from the wreckage. The community center opened on a Saturday in June. Warm, bright, the kind of day that made you believe in beginnings. I stood in the courtyard before the doors opened, watching families gather, children run, grandparents find seats in the afternoon sun. The building rose behind me, my building, our building, windows angled exactly right, light flooding every room, a physical testament to the belief that invisible people deserved to be seen. The grandmother found me first, then the teenager, older now, her portfolio under one arm, then the veteran, walking through the accessible entrance without assistance for the first time in years, then strangers, dozens of them, hundreds, people who'd come to see what hope looked like when you built it from the ground up. I cut the ribbon, said a few words, watched them flood inside, and then, when no one was looking, I walked to the edge of the courtyard and let myself feel it. All of it. The loss, the gain, the love, the pain, the future I'd never imagined, and the past I'd never escape. You did it. His voice, older, tired, familiar in ways that still hurt. I turned. Elias stood at the edge of the courtyard, hands in his pockets, looking at the building like a man seeing something he'd forgotten existed. Q did. You built it. We built it. The community, the residents, the people who showed up every day even when there was no reason to believe. I always knew you would. He moved closer, stopped at a respectful distance. I followed the progress, read every article, wanted to call 100 times. Why didn't you? Because you asked me not to. Because you were right. I made my choice. I had to live with it. Looked at him. Really looked. The lines around his eyes had deepened. The gray in his hair spread further. He looked like a man who'd spent years in a room with no windows, slowly forgetting what light felt like. "How is she?" I asked. "Victoria." "Victoria is Victoria. We exist in the same house, attend the same functions, maintain the same appearances. It's what we're good at. And you?" He was quiet for a long moment. Around us, the celebration continued. Laughter, music, children's voices. "I exist," he said, finally. "I don't know if that's the same as living." I wanted to feel something. Triumph, maybe. That he'd chosen wrong. That he'd paid for it. That justice had been served. But standing there, looking at the man I'd loved more than myself, I felt only sadness. For him. For us. For what could have been if either of us had been brave enough sooner. "I'm sorry," I said, "for my part in it. For the secrets. For the lies. For asking you to be someone you couldn't be. You never asked me to be anyone except myself. That was the problem. I'd forgotten who that was." A child ran past, laughing, chasing a ball toward the building. Elias watched her go. "She's beautiful," he said. "The building. Every line. Every angle. It's exactly what you wanted that first night in the model room. Light for people who'd been kept in darkness." "It's not mine. It's theirs." I gestured at the crowd, the families, the life flooding through the doors. "I just helped them build it." He nodded, swallowed, looked at me one last time. "I should go. Before anyone notices I'm here. Before I cause more damage." "You won't. The damage is done. What's left is just life. Ilara." His voice broke on my name. "I loved you. I love you still. That will never change." Held his gaze. Felt the weight of everything we'd been, everything we'd lost, everything we'd become. "I know," I said. "That's the tragedy, isn't it? Not that we didn't love each other, but that love wasn't enough." He left then, walked away through the crowd, anonymous, unnoticed. A ghost at a celebration he'd helped create. I watched until I couldn't see him anymore. Then I turned back to the building, to the light, to the people who'd trusted me with their hope. The teenager found me at the door, pulled me inside to see her art class, already started, already creating. The grandmother pressed a plate of food into my hands. The veteran waved from a bench in the afternoon sun. I sat with them, ate with them, laughed with them, lived with them, and somewhere in that crowded room, surrounded by the evidence of what we'd built together, I realized the truth I'd been running from since the beginning. Elias wasn't my ruin. He was my teacher. He showed me what I was capable of feeling, what I was willing to risk, what mattered enough to fight for. And when that love couldn't survive the weight of the world, I didn't die. I didn't disappear. I built something from the wreckage. The building stood behind me, solid, real, full of light. I stood in front of it, bruised but whole, broken but breathing, and for the first time in years, I belonged completely to myself. The load-bearing wall of my life wasn't Elias, wasn't any man, wasn't any love except the one I'd finally learned to give myself. I stayed until the sun set, until the last family left, until the building stood quiet and proud against the darkening sky. Then I walked home, alone, free, ready for whatever came next.